From the outside, nothing seems wrong. A person sits in a cafe, scrolling through their phone, smiling at the right moments, answering in a normal voice. But inside, a different scene is unfolding. Every pause becomes evidence. Every shift in tone becomes a warning. Every small change in someone's face turns into a question that will not leave. This is the strange contradiction of hyper-awareness, looking calm while living under constant internal surveillance. And the real question is not why the mind notices so much, but what it has been trying to protect you from. Stay with Mind Psypher for a few minutes, not to label yourself, but to understand the hidden cost of a mind that learned to watch everything. There is a kind of tiredness that does not look dramatic. You still go to work. You still reply to messages. You still laugh when the room expects laughter. You still sit across from people and nod at the right time. But somewhere behind your eyes, another part of you is working. It is scanning. It catches the way someone's smile arrives half a second late. It notices that a message has fewer warmth signals than usual. It hears a small change in someone's voice and begins to wonder what it means. It remembers one sentence from yesterday and then turns it over and over, as if there must be a hidden mistake inside it. Other people might call it overthinking, but for the person living inside it, it rarely feels like a choice. It feels automatic. Before you can even tell yourself to relax, the mind has already moved ahead, building possible explanations. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they are annoyed. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe something has shifted and I was the last one to notice. That is what hyper-awareness often feels like, not simply thinking too much, but being unable to stop monitoring the emotional weather around you. A quiet room does not feel empty. It feels loaded. A delayed reply does not feel neutral. It becomes a signal. A tired face across the dinner table does not stay as someone else's tiredness. It turns into a question about you, and slowly, life becomes less like living and more like managing risk. You are not just present in a conversation. You are watching the conversation while you are having it. You are listening to the words, but also measuring the pauses. You are speaking, but also checking your own tone. You are trying to enjoy the moment, but also observing whether you are enjoying it correctly. And that is where something quietly painful happens. Experience loses its innocence. A walk with a friend becomes an emotional audit. A meeting becomes a performance review happening inside your own head. A family meal becomes a room full of tiny signals you feel responsible for decoding. Even pleasure can become difficult. You are at a gathering, and everyone seems fine. The lights are warm. The conversation is easy. Nothing is obviously wrong, but instead of simply being there, you are checking yourself from the outside. Am I talking too much? Did that joke land badly? Is this person bored? Should I leave soon? Should I stay longer? The mind becomes a camera turned back towards the self. And when that camera stays on for too long, there is nowhere to rest. But hyper-awareness is not always born from weakness. Sometimes it begins as sensitivity. Some people are simply more responsive to sound, light, tone, atmosphere, and emotion. They enter a room and sense tension before anyone has named it. They hear not only what was said, but how it was said. They notice when someone's body is present, but their attention has already gone elsewhere. This does not make them superior. It does not make them broken either. It means their nervous system may be taking in more information than the average person would consciously register, like a microphone set too high. It does not only capture the main voice, it catches the chair moving, the breath before the sentence, the small tremor in the background. And when you take in more, you have to process more. But for many people, there is another layer. Hyper-awareness can also be learned. A child in an unpredictable environment quickly discovers that paying attention is not optional. If the mood of an adult can change without warning, if affection feels uncertain, if tension arrives before anyone explains why, the child learns to read the room. They learn which footsteps mean safety and which ones mean trouble. They learn when to speak, when to disappear, when to become pleasing, when to become small. At first, this is protection. The mind builds a radar because the world feels easier to survive when you can see the storm coming. But the problem is that the radar does not always know when the old storm has passed. So years later, the person may be sitting in a safe office, in a normal cafe, in an ordinary conversation, and the same system is still working as if danger is near. This is the tragedy of many survival skills. They once helped you adapt, then, long after the original threat is gone, they keep asking you to live as if nothing is safe. A colleague frowns, and your body prepares. A partner answers briefly, and your mind starts searching. A parent sighs at the table, and something inside you tightens before you even know why. You may tell yourself you are being irrational, but the body does not respond to logic first. It responds to perceived threat. That is why hyper-awareness can be so exhausting. It is not only mental, it becomes physical. Shoulders lift, the jaw holds tension, the stomach turns, breathing becomes shallow, the heart beats harder than the situation seems to require. The amygdala, often described as part of the brain's threat detection system, does not perfectly distinguish between a real emergency and a social signal your mind has interpreted as danger. If the brain believes something is wrong, the body begins preparing as if something is wrong. Then a loop begins. You drink coffee, and your heart beats faster. A calm mind might say, that is caffeine. But a hyper-aware mind might say, why is my heart doing that? Am I losing control? Is something bad about to happen? So you scan your body. Scanning makes the sensation louder. The louder it gets, the more frightening it feels. The fear creates more physical tension, and now the small sensation has become a real wave of anxiety. Not because you invented it, but because attention and fear fed it until it grew. This is how the mind can accidentally become trapped in its own alarm system. It is trying to protect you, but the method of protection is costing you your peace. One of the heaviest burdens of hyper-awareness is the belief that noticing something means you must do something about it. If you feel you must lift them, if your family feels tense, you feel you must soften the room. If your partner seems distant, you feel you must solve the distance immediately. If a colleague feels uncomfortable, you adjust your voice, your posture, your presence, almost as if your job is to regulate the emotional climate for everyone else. But awareness is not the same as responsibility. You can notice a cloud without being responsible for the weather. You can sense that someone is upset without becoming the container for all of their pain. You can care about people without turning yourself into the repair system for every room you enter. This distinction sounds simple. For someone who has lived by scanning, it can feel almost wrong, because if you have spent years surviving by noticing tiny changes, doing nothing may feel dangerous. Letting someone else have their own mood may feel selfish. Not fixing the atmosphere may feel like abandonment, but it is not abandonment. It is a boundary, and a boundary is not the absence of love. It is what allows love to remain human instead of becoming self-erasure. Imagine another person's emotion as a river. For years, the moment you saw the water rising, you jumped in. You thought compassion meant being swept away with them. You thought closeness meant losing your footing whenever someone else lost theirs. But there is another way to care. You can stand on the bank, you can see the river, you can hear it, you can be present, but your feet remain on solid ground. That is not coldness. That is emotional separation. It means I can witness this without becoming it. I can care without carrying it. I can be sensitive without surrendering my whole nervous system to the room. Another shift begins when you stop analyzing every feeling and start naming it. A hyper-aware mind often tries to solve discomfort immediately. Why do I feel this? Who caused it? What does it mean? Where is this going? What should I do before it gets worse? But sometimes, analysis arrives too early. It pulls you deeper into the maze before you have even understood what you are feeling. So try something quieter. Namet it. I feel anxious. I feel unsettled. I feel embarrassed. I feel overstimulated. I feel hurt. A named emotion becomes less like an emergency and more like information. It may still be uncomfortable, but it is no longer a command you must obey at once. There is a small space between feeling and reaction, and in that space, freedom begins to return. The next step is reality checking. Instead of letting the mind write 10 possible scripts, you can ask one honest question. You seem a bit distant today. Is everything all right? I noticed. I started guessing what you meant. Can I check with you? I may be reading too much into this, but I would rather ask than invent a story in my head. Directness can feel terrifying when you are used to surviving through interpretation, because interpretation gives the illusion of control. If you can figure everything out privately, maybe you will never have to risk being vulnerable. But private guessing has a cost. It consumes hours. It turns people into puzzles. It makes the nervous system live inside possibilities rather than facts. A clear question does not solve everything. Some people will not answer clearly. Some situations will remain uncertain. But asking brings you closer to reality than endless rehearsal ever can. And when reality does not give you an answer, return to the body, not as a problem to monitor, but as a place to land. Your feet are touching the floor, your back is against the chair. Air is entering and leaving. There is light on the wall. There is a cup on the table. There is a room around you. The present moment is not always peaceful, but it is usually smaller than the catastrophe. Your mind is projecting. Grounding is not magic. It is a way of telling the nervous system we are here, not inside the feared future. We are dealing with this minute, not an entire imagined life. A hyper-aware person does not need to become careless. They do not need to stop being sensitive. They do not need to become someone who misses every subtle thing. The goal is not to destroy the radar. The goal is to lower its volume, to let it inform you without ruling you, to let it notice without forcing you to react, to let it protect you only when protection is truly needed, because that radar may have a history. It may have been built by a younger version of you who was doing their best, a version that learned to watch carefully because watching carefully once reduced harm, so it does not need hatred. It may need gratitude, and then, gently, new instructions. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. But not every pause is a threat. Not every tired face is about me. Not every delayed message is rejection. Not every sensation in my body is danger. Not every emotion in the room belongs in my hands. If hyper-awareness has been affecting your sleep, your relationships, your work, or your sense of safety, support from a mental health professional or a trusted person can matter, not because you are broken, but because no one should have to untangle every alarm alone. And for the ordinary moments, perhaps the work begins smaller. The next time a message arrives late, pause before turning it into evidence. The next time someone's tone changes, ask yourself, do I know this? Or am I guessing from fear? The next time you feel responsible for the entire room, remind yourself, I can be present without carrying everything. And the next time the radar switches on inside you, do not rush to shame it. Just notice it. Then ask whether this moment truly needs a full emergency response. Maybe freedom is not the absence of sensitivity. Maybe freedom is sensitivity with a boundary, a mind that still notices, but no longer obeys every signal, a heart that still cares, but does not abandon itself to prove it, a body that slowly learns the difference between danger and discomfort. You may always be someone who sees the small things. The shift is learning that seeing them does not mean you must disappear inside them. Some moments are allowed to remain simple. A message can just be late. A face can just be tired. A room can just be quiet. And you can just be here not decoding, not defending, not preparing for every possible loss. Just here, breathing, present, enough. Mind Psypher will keep looking beneath the surface with you, not to make life heavier, but to help you return to it more gently.